You know what's wild? For years, we were told this family was built on love, choice, and faith. That plural marriage, at least in this house, was about unity, not control. About equality, not hierarchy. But the real twist? That picture-perfect, polygamous dream the Browns packaged and sold to the world wasn't just flawed, it was manufactured. And now, all these years later, the cracks aren't just showing, they're spilling out across every interview, every awkward couch scene, every silent glance that speaks louder than words. What we saw wasn't harmony. It was control wearing a friendly mask. Hey friends, I'm Maya, and welcome back to Next Gossip. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and sound off in the comments, because this one's personal. We're peeling back the layers on what really held the Brown family together, and what finally ripped it apart. Spoiler alert, it wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just the challenges of plural marriage. It wasn't even Christine suddenly turning cold. This unraveling was always coming. Because from the very beginning, this family was never built on true equality.
Cody explodes on Robyn's family as Janelle strikes back with shocking Vegas power play. Kody Brown, the self-proclaimed patriarch, tried to run a plural family like a dictatorship with good PR. 1 man, 4 women, all expected to function as a single, unified household under his leadership. Christine, the nurturer. Janelle, the independent realist. Mary, the original and once favored. And Robyn, the newcomer who somehow became the centerpiece without anyone officially saying it. But we saw it. We all saw it. At first, the Browns looked revolutionary. They cameras into their lives, declaring that plural marriage could thrive with love, faith, communication. And for a while, people bought it. But behind that glossy facade, a very different story was unfolding. Over time, the mask slipped. Not through words, but in the silences. The averted eyes. The way the kids grew distant. The way Cody treated honest disagreement like treason. And the way the original wives, the ones who built that family, started to fade into the background. It wasn't one blow-up that broke the Browns. It was a long, slow erosion. A pattern. Years of Cody demanding absolute loyalty while offering very little back. Years of Robyn being shielded and elevated, while the others were left to emotionally self-manage. In that house, silence became survival. Speaking up made you difficult. Questioning the system meant you weren't committed. And the only person allowed to have emotional outbursts? Cody. So when Christine left, when Janelle began speaking her mind, when even Mary stopped defending him, it didn't just shake things up. It exposed everything. Because the house didn't fall in a storm. It was already crumbling. And everyone was too busy smiling for the cameras to admit it. Christine's departure wasn't a surprise. It was a reckoning. She had been the glue. The one who smiled through chaos. Kept birthdays and holidays alive. Covered the cracks so the illusion could stay intact. But that smile? It hit a storm. And when she finally said enough, it wasn't just a goodbye, it was a seismic shift in power. The box of Cody's things in the garage? That was no outburst. That was a quiet declaration. Years of being dismissed, minimized, and made to feel like a guest in her own marriage culminated in that one simple act. It said everything. Remember the intimacy conversation? Christine asking for connection and Cody acting like she was asking for the moon? That wasn't just a failing relationship. That was a woman realizing her worth. And her exit wasn't messy, it was clear, calm, powerful. A woman choosing peace over proximity. Choosing self-respect over shared calendars and performative family unity. That moment didn't just shift the dynamics, it shattered the foundation. Because Christine didn't just leave Cody. She walked away from the entire system. The one that told her staying silent was noble. That sacrificing herself for the bigger picture was righteous. And Robyn? Robyn felt that blow the hardest. In her world, Christine leaving wasn't just painful. It was dangerous. It threatened the structure she benefited from most. Robyn wasn't just stunned, she was destabilized. Because if one wife could walk, maybe the others could, too. Let's not forget, Robyn spent years positioning herself as the peacemaker. The bridge. The innocent bystander just trying to hold the family together. But when Christine made her move, Robyn didn't show empathy. She showed fear. Because control can't survive without compliance, and Christine stopped complying. And that's when we really saw it. Christine glowing. Laughing. Looking like she'd dropped 100 pounds of invisible weight. She wasn't just out, she was free. And in contrast, Robyn started to unravel. More emotional. More defensive. More visibly anxious. Because for the first time, someone had called Cody's bluff and walked away stronger. Christine's exit wasn't an act of drama. It was an act of self-definition. Quiet. Firm. Freeing. And that kind of strength? It spreads. Janelle felt it. Mary saw it. Cody? He started losing his grip, not just on his family, but on the carefully curated narrative he had relied on for years. Because Christine's peace was contagious. And suddenly, the other women started wondering, what if I deserve that, too? Janelle questions Cody. Robyn's crying again. Mary tries to speak up, cue more tears. But here's the thing, those tears rarely come with accountability. They come with guilt trips, soft distractions, and a practiced sadness that recenters attention. Robyn doesn't take ownership. She absorbs the spotlight. She recasts herself as the glue, the martyr, the misunderstood soul trying to hold it all together, when in reality, she's the one who benefited most from the breakdown. Let's talk about the favoritism. Because fans? We saw it. From day one, Robyn wasn't just another wife. She was the wife. Cody spent more time at her house. He made her needs the priority. He even legally divorced Mary to adopt her kids. That wasn't just symbolic, it was structural. The original wives weren't speculating. They were witnessing it. Living it. One of the most telling moments? That family finances scene. Janelle, calm as ever, pointed out she had no property in her name, 0 assets. Meanwhile, Robyn lived in the largest, most secure home, partially funded by family money. And when this imbalance was raised, Robyn didn't suggest evening things out. She got defensive. Suddenly it was about her sacrifices, her pain, her struggles. But let's be real, who's struggling in $1 million house with the only fully present husband? And then there were the house rules during COVID. Remember that? Robyn's were stricter. And Cody, unsurprisingly, enforced her rules over everyone else's needs. The other wives were sidelined, isolated, even. Janelle went weeks without a visit. Christine barely saw Cody. And what did Robyn do? She played the "I'm just trying to protect the family" card. But fans saw it for what it was. She wasn't protecting the family. She was protecting her access. If that meant the other wives had to suffer emotionally, so be it. This is the kind of quiet control that drives people mad. Robyn doesn't yell. She doesn't rage like Cody. She speaks softly, eyes full of tears. But the result is the same: silence the dissent, center herself, maintain the throne. And the cherry on top? She always acts confused. That's her go-to posture. I just don't understand why they're pulling away. I don't know why they don't talk to me. Really, Robyn? You don't understand why Christine felt abandoned after a decade without intimacy? You can't see why Janelle, who financially supported this family, might feel slighted when she walks away with nothing? You don't get why Mary, left emotionally starved for years, might stop fighting for a place she was never truly wanted? Robyn has become the embodiment of the imbalance viewers have watched build season after season. She speaks of unity while existing in a separate reality, safe, protected, supported. She says she never wanted to be the favorite, but her actions suggest otherwise. She dominates confessionals, commands attention in family decisions, and when other wives break down, she rarely comforts. Instead, she tears up later in her own segment, recentering the narrative around her heartbreak. Fans remember the timelines. We remember the Vegas years, the orchestrated Christmas rentals, the emotional fractures disguised as tough conversations. We remember who always landed on her feet when the dust settled. And no, Robyn's not fooling anyone. Her comfort in a system built on the other women's heartbreak is loud, and her tears don't soften the truth. They spotlight it. And that brings us to Janelle. The quiet one. The steady one. The woman who never screamed, never demanded, never played the victim, but whose absence in Kody's eyes said more than any meltdown ever could. For years, Janelle was the backbone. Logical. Consistent. She didn't ask for romantic gestures. She didn't compete for spotlight. She just was supportive, grounded, reliable. And somehow, that made her invisible. It's heartbreaking to realize Janelle gave more to the family, financially and emotionally, than almost anyone, and walked away with nothing to show for it. Not bitterness. Just truth. She said it herself, on camera. She contributed. She sacrificed. And when she finally needed security, there was none. What makes it harder? Janelle didn't demand much. She didn't ask for daily affection or romantic validation. In Kody's words, she was his buddy wife. And he said that like it was a badge of honor. But what did that really mean? She helped raise kids, managed money, kept things running. But was she ever really seen as an equal? Or was she just convenient? The one who wouldn't make waves? And here's the trap, because Janelle didn't make scenes, Kody didn't have to deal with her pain. No yelling meant no urgency. No tears meant no need to fix anything. But silent suffering is still suffering. And by the later seasons, the exhaustion was written all over her face. You could see the shift. Kody stopped consulting her. Stopped considering her. And still, she tried. She showed up for conversations. Asked for transparency. Pushed for fairness. And every time, Kody twisted it into drama. Her practical requests became accusations. Her calm became coldness. Then came the turning point. That quiet, devastating moment when she looked into the camera and said, "I don't even know if I care if he comes back." She didn't shout it. Didn't cry. Just said it. And it hit like a bomb. That wasn't a woman falling apart. That was a woman waking up. Not out of anger, but clarity. She wasn't chasing peace anymore. She was choosing it. And while Kody flailed, blaming Christine, blaming the wives, blaming the pandemic, Janelle stood still. The power of that silence? Unmistakable. And that silence? Let's not forget the financial piece either. That's where things start to cut deep, not just for the women involved, but for the viewers who have watched for over a decade and seen the disparities unfold in real time. Janelle, who poured years of sweat equity and real money into the Brown family dream, walked away with no property in her name. At one point, she was living in an RV on Coyote Pass land that was supposed to represent shared hope, a future for the whole family. But when it came down to it, Janelle was left with a parcel of dirt and a fistful of empty promises. Meanwhile, Robyn was in a fully paid-off house. Christine had secured a place of her own after leaving. Mary had a rental. But Janelle? She had land that hadn't been developed and no clear path forward. It wasn't just a loss of stability. It was a betrayal of trust. Because for years, Janelle believed the family finances were communal. That every dollar she contributed was for the collective good. And when she finally asked what part of it belonged to her, all she got were sidesteps, deflections, and silence. And that silence? It spoke volumes. Janelle even said plainly on camera that the family structure didn't work for her anymore. That's not a flippant statement. That's a quiet truth surfacing after years of trying to make a lopsided system feel balanced. She tried to stay within the lines, to preserve the peace, to keep believing in the dream. But the dream had shifted. And somewhere along the way, it stopped including her. So when people ask, did Janelle ever feel equal? The answer seems painfully obvious. She might have hoped she did. Maybe, at times, she even convinced herself of it. But deep down, the scales were never balanced. Cody didn't invest in the relationship the same way. He labeled her the buddy wife, like that was some badge of honor. But it really just gave him permission to ignore her emotional needs. And when Janelle finally asked for something more, for fairness, for clarity, for recognition, he treated it like an attack. But here's what Cody didn't count on: Janelle didn't need to explode. She didn't need a dramatic walkout. She just needed to stop waiting. So she did. And that quiet decision? That was her power. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't cruel. It was rooted in self-respect. And in that same breath, we turn toward Mary, another woman who knew what it felt like to be loyal to a fault. Mary, the original wife. The woman who helped build this family from the ground up, who believed in the ideal before there was ever a camera in sight. Her journey is one of the most quietly devastating because it's built not on one big betrayal but on 1,000 small rejections. At the beginning, Mary and Cody had a bond. You could see it. But that intimacy eroded over time. The emotional neglect crept in slowly. There were fewer conversations, colder interactions, longer silences. Until that became the new normal. And through it all, Mary stayed. Even after the catfishing scandal, arguably the most vulnerable moment of her life, broadcast for the world, she stayed. And yes, that scandal was messy. But instead of reacting with empathy, Cody used it as a final reason to emotionally detach. He told her, plainly, that he had no romantic interest. And then, he just moved on. On camera. Off camera. No difference. Mary was left in limbo, technically still part of the family, but emotionally abandoned. What made her story even harder to watch was her persistence. Mary kept showing up. Kept trying. Kept supporting family events even when it was clear she was on the outside looking in. You'd see her on that couch next to Cody, but the emotional chasm between them could swallow a canyon. And fans asked the same question again and again: why does she stay? But Mary wasn't clinging to Cody, not really. She was holding on to the idea of who she used to be, the first wife, the one who helped create the foundation. She wasn't just grieving a relationship. She was grieving an identity. Walking away didn't just mean letting go of Cody. It meant letting go of the role she had built her life around. But in the end, she did walk away. And when she did, it was graceful, quiet, and deeply symbolic. She didn't throw accusations or demand apologies. She just looked at the wreckage, realized there was nothing left worth clinging to, and stepped out with her dignity intact. And even then, even after all that, Mary still found it in her heart to support Christine. She didn't get a seat at the wedding. She wasn't front and center. But she cheered anyway. That kind of grace, that maturity, it says more than 1,000 monologues ever could. So what are we really seeing here? A pattern. Women who gave everything, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and were met with half-hearted returns. Women who were sidelined when they stopped being convenient. Women who were painted as difficult when they dared to ask for fairness. And through all of it, one thread ties them together: they were all told, in one way or another, that their needs were too much. But they weren't. They were just inconvenient to a system that was never designed to hold them equally. And while the story may feel like it's reaching a conclusion, with Janelle stepping away, with Mary finding her footing, with Christine building a new life, there's more to unpack. Because for every tear on the couch, every quiet confession, every unspoken hurt, there's another truth waiting just beneath the surface. Her story is still unfolding. And honestly, I hope the next chapter of Mary Brown's life has nothing to do with plural marriage. She's been through enough. She's given enough. And at the very least, she deserves peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't require sacrifice. The kind she never found within the walls of the Brown family. Because maybe, just maybe, Mary's loyalty wasn't weakness. Maybe it was something more complex. Maybe it was endurance. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was a painful form of love. But most importantly, it was loyalty to an idea, not to the man who stopped loving her or the system that wore her down. She was devoted to the vision of a family they once promised to build together, a vision that slowly unraveled. Now, as the dust begins to settle on the Brown family saga, it's impossible not to acknowledge the profound transformations happening before our eyes. What started as a series about plural marriage has become a masterclass in personal rebirth. Christine, Janelle, and Mary have all walked through fire. And yet, they're emerging, stronger, clearer, freer. Christine's glow-up was more than just leaving, it was reclaiming. Let's start with Christine. The third wife, the happy one, the people-pleaser who always seemed to put everyone else's needs ahead of her own. But the moment she walked away from Cody, everything changed. That wasn't just a breakup, it was a liberation. The symbolism was unmistakable. She took off her wedding ring, packed up her things, and stepped into a future that was no longer written by Cody. And from that moment on, she's been glowing, not just on social media, but in spirit. Whether it's her travels, her kids, or her new love, every post tells the same story: Christine chose herself. And that choice is rewriting her entire narrative. Janelle's power is in her quiet strength. Then there's Janelle, the steady one, the practical one, the rock of the family. For years, she held everything together. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. And for years, she asked for so little in return. But Janelle isn't waiting anymore. She's not chasing Cody for answers. She's not fighting to prove her worth. Instead, she's focusing on her business, her children, her peace. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But her quiet strength speaks volumes. While others played out chaos on camera, Janelle was doing the hardest work of all, letting go with dignity. Mary's journey has been the most painful and the most poetic. Mary's path is harder to define. Her emotional journey has been tangled in betrayal, rejection, and longing. The catfishing scandal exposed her vulnerability to the world, and Cody's response sealed the emotional distance that had been building for years. And yet, Mary stayed. Hoping. Waiting. Believing something might shift. It didn't. But here's what's powerful: even after being sidelined, ignored, and humiliated, she never stopped showing up with grace. And when Christine celebrated her new beginning, Mary cheered her on, with no bitterness, no drama. Just maturity. Just kindness. And that tells you everything you need to know about who Mary is now. She's stepping into her own life. Slowly. Quietly. But with real intention. Her social media now feels different, lighter, more joyful, more her. No longer the forgotten wife on the couch. She's writing a new story. On her own terms. The symbols have changed, and so has the meaning. For years, sister wives leaned into symbolism. Wedding rings, shared homes, family holidays. These were supposed to mean unity. Togetherness. But more often than not, they were just set pieces, used to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. Now, Those same symbols are being rewritten. Christine's missing ring? That's freedom. Janelle's changing definition of home? That's autonomy. Mary's distance from those family holidays? That's peace. What once symbolized control now represents release. Healing isn't pretty, but it's powerful. Here's the truth: healing doesn't look like a fairy tale. It's not neat. It's not Instagram perfect. It's messy. It's non-linear. It's hard. And sometimes it looks like walking away late, after you've already lost so much. But it's still healing. Christine, Janelle, and Mary aren't just surviving anymore. They're rebuilding. They're reclaiming. They're redefining what it means to be whole, outside of Cody, outside of plural marriage, and outside of the show.